This is the Washington Times front page for Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. Former President Trump is bracing for a federal indictment related to the riot at the U.S. Capitol and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election after prosecutors named him as a target of a grand jury investigation. Jeff Murdoch, Tom Howe, and Alex Miller report the so-called target letter from special counsel Jack Smith didn't say what charges Trump would face in the probe. Investigators have looked into a variety of his plots to reverse his election loss in 2020. If the grand jury hands down an indictment as expected, it will be the third time this year that criminal charges have been filed against Trump. A single charge was previously unprecedented for a former president or a front-running candidate for the White House. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement failed to deliver immigration court summonses to more than 80% of illegal immigrants caught and released under the parole program. Stephen Dinan reports government statistics submitted to a federal judge found that more than 40% of the migrants never checked in at all. Of the rest, ICE failed to issue a notice to appear in more than two-thirds of the cases. In the court filings, officials said some of the migrants may still check in late. Officials also explained ICE's failure to issue summonses as the result of limited agency resources. The Biden administration faces growing pressure to explain the disappearance of top State Department Iran envoy Robert Malley. House Republican sources told our national security team leader Guy Taylor and Pentagon correspondent Ben Wolfgang that the State Department provided few answers about Malley. He was at the center of the administration's diplomacy with Iran before he was reportedly placed on unpaid leave and had his security clearance suspended. 18 Republicans have signed a letter seeking answers to numerous questions about Malley and his status, including exactly when he was placed on leave, how long he continued to work on Iran policy after his security clearance was suspended, and whether he returned all classified devices to the State Department. Legal experts say bakers, florists, and others still might have to battle in court if LGBTQ celebrations conflict with their beliefs. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 last month that artists can refuse work that would violate their beliefs, reasoning that the First Amendment trumps public accommodation laws. But Alex Sawyer reports experts say other courts will now have to determine whether creative businesses are speaking when they take jobs or whether they're providing services. All states protect against discrimination based on race, gender, and religion, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures, but they vary on protections for other categories such as disability, age, and sexual orientation. And finally, a senior Biden administration official said Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang is missing from public view, and his whereabouts are a mystery to the U.S. government. Bill Gertz reports Qin was last seen in public more than 3 weeks ago. His absence is triggering speculation that he was removed for unspecified missteps. U.S. intelligence agencies are unaware of Quinn's status, and there are varying reports about what happened to him. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerber.